I research the supernatural for a living. I think I found my first genuine case. By WhyTryForQuality. God, love that name. I'm a freelance nonfiction writer with strong interests in the supernatural. In other words, I'd be almost completely screwed if my roommates didn't share my same fascination. Absolutely no reputable publication was going to pay me to tell their readers, "Sorry everyone, but ghosts still aren't real," for the 8th time this year. Except, I'm starting to reconsider that view. I recently went on a road trip across Saskatchewan, checking out a few stories of haunted farms and the like. Really not much else to do in the midst of a pandemic. I can't exactly follow up on any actual promising leads I've encountered. Like Siberian Village, or name a really old house in the UK. So that's why I investigated the single worst piece of advice I've ever come across. A short story with no listed author, retrieved from an unmarked envelope, stamped with an abstract drawing of a camel and maybe some kind of lizard, with the words Nouveau Paris, Saskatchewan scribed on the back. I've copied it here. Peter had wonderful eyes. They were very special. Peter could see the truth of the world. He knew that the strange swaying tree the other children whispered about had never been a tree. He knew that clever children, living children, stayed far away from it. Otherwise, there would be lighting paste, and they would be gone. But not him. Peter could see the truth of the world. If you were to ask his friends, family, and neighbors, they would tell you that Peter lived on the outskirts of town in a quaint little farm. Peter would agree. They would tell you that Peter lived there with his mother, his father, and his brother. Peter would disagree. If you asked Peter, he would tell you that his father was a monster. Peter could see the truth of the world. It's not that his father was cruel or harsh or rowdy. The monster listened intently as Peter recounted his fanciful adventures at the dinner table. The monster helped his brother on the farm, teaching him the family trade. The monster told Peter that he loved him every night, but Peter knew it was a lie. Peter could see the truth of the world. Peter called it a monster because his father was dead and the man living in his house was a monster. An imposter who had eaten his real father with a slow slurping and taken his place. A great, grotesque worm. The worm's disguise was almost perfect. Even Peter's wonderful eyes were sometimes fooled by it. But he knew. Every night, after the false father professed his empty love, he listened. Peter's ears were not as wonderful as his eyes, but they could still hear the slithering along, scraping against the floor as it left to bed. Peter could see the truth of the world, but nobody listened to him. The farmhand ignored Peter as he accepted the worm's request for help finding a lamb that wandered into the woods. His brother's friend ignored Peter when he went with the worm to check on the new calf in the stables. The vagabond ignored Peter when the worm offered shelter in the barn. There was a slow slurping and Peter never saw them again. Peter hated being ignored. He knew that if his family could just see the worm for what it was, they would stop it. They had to stop it. Peter reached far and wide for some way to make them understand, to save his family from this monster. He found it in the basement. An ancient chest filled with teeth, but Peter could see the truth of the world, and he heard the clattering voice of his savior. They didn't ignore him. They saw the truth of the world. They told Peter what to do, and Peter obeyed. One day, when the worm went into town to meet with an old friend of Peter's father, Peter opened his family's eyes. He first went to his mother in the garden and plucked her blind, foolish eyes. His brother in the barn, Peter took them with a cold, sticky, and let his family see through his own wonderful eyes. His family, now, could see, but they were far too busy screaming to hear Peter explain his plan to kill the worm when it returned to their house. So Peter took their mouths with the hand, cracking, and they were a part of him now. They could see the truth of the world. Peter returned to the basement and met his new friend. He obeyed. Peter took the chest of teeth, and he ate them, one by one, by one, by one, by... Peter had wonderful eyes. They were very special, but not as special as his mouth, for Peter spoke the truth about the world. Peter killed the worm when it returned. It couldn't handle the truth of the world, for it came from another. It took 3 days to eat the worm. It was very chewy, and Peter was small. One day, a friend of Peter's mother came to visit. It had been a long time since she saw her friend, and she was rather concerned. Peter answered the door.
Oh God, what is that? Stay away, please don't hurt me. No, 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 no!
The woman said to Peter.
Hello,
Peter said to the woman.
would you like to see the truth about this world?
Peter took his own eyes along with hers. She no longer needed them to see the truth, and he needed the space for his mouth. Peter went to the village. They can see the truth now. They speak it. Peter has a wonderful mouth. It speaks the truth and the lies about this world, and it speaks these things about other worlds. They so desperately want to tell you. If you understand, then you can join them, and you can be perfect. So there's no such thing as Nouveau Paris, Saskatchewan, and this story is obviously fictional. Yet, on my trip, I encountered a ghost town. It wasn't on my map. I can't find it on any older maps I've tracked down, but it was there. Nouveau Paris, the old sign read. And I heard it, singing, screaming, laughing, hundreds of voices all at once. Whatever entity this story is discussing, it's real, it's dangerous, and I heard it. It was beautiful, and I desperately wanted to join it. I didn't, of course, and I have my new favorite bird to thank for that. It squawked at something, and the noise snapped me out of whatever trance the voices had me under. I haven't returned to Nouveau Paris. I haven't told my roommate about it, and I probably shouldn't have told you either. Nouveau Paris, Saskatchewan is not a real place. That should be reason enough to not look for it. So don't.